Today we're talking 5 helpful tips to get you started backpacking. Hey, what's going on? My name is Dan. I love hiking, I love backpacking, I love gear. If you guys like that stuff too, consider subscribing to the channel. I've got 5 tips to help you guys get started backpacking, but stick around to the end because I'll have an extra bonus tip for you guys just because I love you guys so much. So let me preface this by saying I'm assuming that you are a newer backpacker. If you're a seasoned backpacker, please stick around as well. I promise that you're gonna maybe learn something new, or maybe you can help out in the comments below to some newer backpackers to help them with some helpful tips as well. So let's get started with tip number 1. Tip number 1 is guzzle all the water you can before you start your hike. Now, I'm not talking guzzle to the point where you get sick or your stomach hurts, but I'll help you guys out with carrying water on the trail. So when you get to the trailhead, grab a bottle of water that's already in your car, because I'm sure you overpacked water, and that's not a bad thing. Trust me, that's good. Always overpacking water is a good thing when you start your trip. But grab a bottle of water and just down that bad boy as fast as you can. Get it all in your stomach, and then you've already got water in your stomach to start your hike. That way you can last a couple of miles out on the trail, and you can get as far as you can before you start getting thirsty again. It's just a way to help you guys not carry as much water or as much weight on the trail, or help you not feel as thirsty when you're hiking. Another way to do this is when you stop to filter your water, you're going to want to do the exact same thing. So when you stop to filter your water, don't rush to get back on the trail as quickly as you possibly can. Take a minute to breathe, take a minute to relax, filter your water, and then you're going to want to get that bottle of water again, drink it down as much as you can so you can replenish yourself and rehydrate, and then refilter that bottle of water and pack it back in your backpack. See, now you've carried an extra bottle of water with you and you didn't even realize it. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is wear the right footwear the first time you hike. So a lot of beginner backpackers, the first thing that they'll do is they'll go out and get a big, bulky pair of boots because that's what they've heard. They've got to get hiking boots. And I never actually did the hiking boot thing. I was able to find enough YouTube videos and talk to enough hikers to realize that that wouldn't work for me. Plus, I've worn boots in the past that didn't really work out too well for me. Now, I'm not going to tell you what you should be doing. I'm just going to make my suggestion for a tip to help you out because I think most people out there don't necessarily need the full ankle support of a big, bulky hiking boot. The problem with a hiking boot is that it is more than likely going to cause blisters than it is to really support your ankle as much as you think it's going to support. So what I've done is I've gone out and gotten trail runners to support my feet because they've been so much more comfortable. I was used to wearing them. As a matter of fact, the first pair of hiking shoes that I wore was just a pair of tennis shoes that I had laying around the house. The one mistake in those shoes was that the tread was pretty worn, so they got pretty slick out on the trail. So trail runners are a great option to get you started on the trail. They're going to have great tread underneath, and they're going to be more comfortable to wear than a big, bulky hiking boot. Plus, those hiking boots can be really, really heavy, and that's just going to add more weight as you're hiking. One thing to consider when you get those hiking shoes or those trail runners is to make sure that you size up just a little bit, because your feet, when you hike, are going to naturally swell up, and you're going to want to make sure that you've got maybe a ½ an inch at the toe of your shoe, because your feet are going to swell, your toes are going to swell, and that's going to cause your feet to expand and then rub on the outside of your shoe, is just where you get most of those blisters. Don't get those hiking boots. Start out with trail runners, pick the right shoes, pick the right footwear the first time out. Tip number 3 is pick the right hiking distance the first time you go out. So you're going to hear a lot of YouTubers, a lot of people out there. You're going to go to a lot of blogs and websites, and guys are going to be talking about the mileage they did, the high miles. I'm saving all my miles. I got to hike the miles. It's miles, 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 miles. forget all that stuff and remember why you're out there to begin with. It's to enjoy nature and to enjoy the experience, and don't worry about the high miles. Now, unless you're like an athlete or a trail runner or something along those lines, maybe that's a little bit different for you, but don't worry about picking those high mile trails. Pick the right distance the first time you go out. What I recommend you do is pick a short one-night trip the first time you go out. Maybe it's a mile, maybe it's 2 miles, maybe it's a half a mile, maybe it's a quarter of a mile, so you have the ability to bail and get to the car if you need to. But that's really going to help you understand just what you're getting yourself into as you start your backpacking trips, getting you going. And when you get out on the trail, you'll realize that all that weight and all that stuff that you packed may not make it that 10, 15, or 20 miles that you ambitiously set out to do. Now, maybe you're hiking in an area where you have to camp at designated spots, where the park district or the National Park District has required you to stay at certain campgrounds. And your campsites are 10 miles apart, and you're wondering how in the world you're going to make it that far. Just know that in an emergency, and I've talked to several park rangers about this, that most park rangers out there and most park services out there are okay with you in an emergency to stealth camp. In other words, stopping where you're at if it's getting dark, and if it's a dangerous situation, if you are really that in need of stopping and just camping there out in the woods somewhere, setting up camp. Now, I don't encourage you to do this just to do this, but I do encourage you to understand that if it's a high mileage trip, if it's the campsites are far apart and you're really worried about it, just know that it really is okay to stop somewhere if you absolutely have to for the night and set up camp there. Tip number 4, don't overthink the planning. One mistake that I've seen a lot of new backpackers do is just overthink their entire trip. They are overanalyzing every single detail, every minute food item, every mile that they're going to be hiking, every ounce of water that they're going to be carrying. The backpack, the sleep system. I'm not telling you to not be safe when you plan your trip. Obviously, you want to plan to be safe and do the things to, prepare for safety, but the whole process can be super overwhelming. So I would tell you, don't overthink your backpacking trip. The reason you don't want to overthink it is because this will cause you to overpack, and you're going to begin to pack your fears. In other words, you're going to begin to pack things that you don't need to bring on your trip. And when you get there, you're going to realize all that weight and all that extra bulk that you brought that you didn't need. Just get out there and remember again why you're doing this in the first place. Maybe it's to just enjoy the outdoors. Maybe it's to just spend time with friends. Maybe it's because like your husband or your girlfriend or your wife or somebody or your boyfriend or whoever talked you into it and you're like going for them. I don't know, whatever it is, but don't overthink the details. Just get out there, have fun. And if you're going with somebody else, maybe you guys can pack things together and you guys can use each other's items so you don't have to pack as much, but don't overthink your trip. Tip number 5 is learn how to adjust your backpack. So you've got your backpack all packed up. You've got everything inside of it you need. You've got all your day's worth of food. You've got all your water, and you put it on for the first time, and that's when reality hits and you're like, oh man, I gotta carry this thing? Are you kidding me? What am I gonna do now? Don't panic, don't freak out. You just gotta know how to adjust your backpack. And let me know in the comments below if you guys want me to make a separate video on adjusting your backpack and how to adjust your backpack. But I'll just tell you very, very quickly that there are several straps all over your backpack to make it more comfortable to be able to carry a heavier load, or if you've got a load that's kind of off balance, you can adjust the straps, where the hip belt should be going, where the load strap should be at, where the arm strap should be at. Know how to adjust that backpack. It's going to make that backpack feel so much more comfortable. The last trip I was on at Pitchford Rocks up in Michigan, I saw some backpackers who had that backpack hanging way back off of their backpack, and they were struggling to stand up straight. There are straps to adjust it, to pull it forward on most backpacks towards you. So know how to adjust that backpack ahead of your trip instead of learning about it when you get out on the trail. All right, guys, you ready for that bonus tip? Here it is. Bonus tip number 6 is just be humble and don't think that you know it all out on the trail. And this is myself included. I am still watching all kinds of YouTubers, backpacking channels, and learning more and more every time I listen to some of these guys talk about how to backpack and what to do. So make sure that you're commenting on videos, make sure you're asking people questions, make sure you're researching ahead of time, make sure you're learning as much as you can, and don't get out there and be afraid to ask for help. Don't get out on the trail and think you know it all. I promise you don't. Even if you've been backpacking for years, I promise you still don't know it all. There's so much more to learn from backpacking. All right, guys, those are my 5 or 6 backpacking tips for you guys. If you guys like this video, would you please hit that like button? Also consider subscribing. I've got a ton of content I'm ready to put out there for you guys, and I'd love for you guys to be notified when it comes out. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.